There are a great many possibilities where meditation practice is concerned. I think it's true that each individual ultimately creates his or her own style. In this audio, though, the intention is to guide you through the structure of a fundamental meditation session, one that includes at least the basics that are common to all. This audio presents the style of meditation said to be the way Shakyamuni Buddha himself practiced. It was organized into something of a system back in the 5th century by the great Theravada Buddhist philosopher Buddhaghosa. He gave it the name Vipassana. Vipassana. And by that name, as well as others, it has strongly influenced meditation practice ever since. In modern times, this school of meditation is commonly referred to as mindfulness meditation. Mindfulness is really the key word here. Total awareness of the reality of the present moment. Not thinking, just being aware. One does not just sit down, close the eyes, and immediately begin genuine vipassana meditation. If the mind in meditation can be compared to being in the presence of the diamonds deep down in a diamond mine, then one must first get down to where the diamonds are. Traditionally, there are 3 parts to this descent: right posture, right breathing, relaxing the body. We begin with right posture. And remember, the entire meditation session is an exercise in mindfulness, right from the start. Right posture, for our purposes, means a sitting posture, whether that be the iconic cross-legged lotus posture, Padmasana, or using a Japanese seiza bench with the slightly tilted seat, or sitting in a chair. Whatever it may be, a few things are considered essential. First of all, you must be well grounded. That is, sitting comfortably with good balance, not really needing to move around much. For good breathing, the back must be upright and straight, not tense though. If you need a lumbar support, use it. There is some disagreement as to whether the eyes should be closed or open, slightly open. You might want to experiment with this. I prefer that the eyes be closed, gently closed. After you establish right posture, it's good to take a minute to settle in, take stock of yourself, physically and mentally, at this moment. Then we move on to right breathing. Be aware of that part of your body directly beneath the rib cage, the belly, in other words. It's known as the hara in Japanese, a term often used in meditation. On in-breaths, let the belly puff outward as much as it wants. Don't try to restrain it. The reason this happens is because of the diaphragm muscle, which is a very strong inverted V-shaped muscle that separates the upper torso from the lower. During an in-breath, the diaphragm descends, thus pushing the soft organs below it out of the way. That's the liver and the stomach primarily. That's what accounts for the belly puffing outward. That's actually the natural way to breathe. Check it out by watching any baby sleeping, lying on its back. On the in-breath, the diaphragm moves upward, and the belly returns inward. It's good to pause, at least briefly, at the end of each in-breath and out-breath. That is a result of the fact that we use the same tube for both. It's fairly common. The breath in, no small part of it is what was the last out-breath. So let's check that. Just practice this for a couple moments. Breathing in, allowing the belly to puff outward, and then breathing out, the diaphragm moves upward and the belly returns to its normal position. Be aware of your nostrils, which, of course, is where the breathing cycle begins. Can you relax your nostrils? Do you detect any tension there? I'll bet you do. It's very common. But why? It serves no purpose. So, fully relax your nostrils and be aware of the path that the in-breath takes from there up through the nose, then down through the nasal pharynx, the throat, into the trachea, the windpipe, which then splits into the bronchial tubes that finally deliver the air to every part of the lungs. And while this is happening, the diaphragm is descending, thus causing the belly to puff out. Hold the in-breath there for a moment, and then, as you relax, the out-breath begins, and the process simply goes in reverse. Let's try that a couple times. You see how, if you get the feel of it, being aware of the breath at the nostrils, following it up, down, ultimately into the lungs. Hold, and then relax. Allow the air to pass up and back out the same way it entered the body. Right breathing is essential for the third part, relaxing the body. And the first thing is, again, to relax the nostrils. And then let this feeling of relaxation spread out into the whole face. Be aware of your eyes. With the eyelids closed, raise your eyebrows way up, and then very slowly, gently lower them without opening the eyes, and sort of have the feeling of letting your eyeballs roll back in the head, the way they do when you sleep. It's a downward flowing feeling, sometimes referred to as being like a fine oil being slowly poured from one vessel to another. Calls for full mindfulness. Down through the cheeks, the ears, the lips, the tongue. Let the tongue just loll in the lower jaw, very relaxed. And continue that flow down into the throat and outward through the muscles of the neck. And following the curve of the neck out across the shoulders to the very ends, the shoulder joints. And then slowly downward into the arms. Let me point out that we're going through this relatively fast, just so you can get the idea of the sequence. But when you do this on your own, you spend as much time as you want, the more the better. For example, with the arms, you probably want to do first one arm, then the other, then together, and each part of the arm separately. So down through the arms, upper arm, elbow, lower arm, wrist, hand, fingers, fully aware. As you relax, almost get a sort of a tingling feeling. Then back up the arms, across where the collarbones nearly join, and down into the upper torso, relaxing the upper back, the rib cage, and what the rib cage is there to protect: the lungs and the heart. The lungs don't stand side by side, apart from the heart, the way we often see it illustrated. The lungs, you might say, they embrace the heart. And then on down to the lower torso. The diaphragm, of course, that controls breathing. Below that, the soft organs, the liver, stomach, intestines, the lower back, where so much tension is stored, the pelvic area, the genital area, the hips, the hip joints, and then on into the legs, just rather like the arms. Same approach, one at a time, parts individually, with total mindfulness. Back to right breathing. And relax this time. Relax the whole body on the out-breath. The relaxation is rather like a continuation of the out-breath. As you breathe out, you also release the tension in the body. You may find that as you do this, certain spots will have tensed back up. Well, everybody has their own list. It might be the left arm or the right thigh or whatever. In which case, momentarily focus your mindfulness on that spot and relax that particular part of the body through a series of out-breaths. And then return with full mindfulness to relaxing the body on a series of out-breaths. This can go on for a fairly long time. Depends on how long it takes for you to get the honest feeling of being deeply relaxed throughout the entire body. Some people like to use a mantra while doing this, such as Om or Rama. You might like to use the mantra, let it go. Oddly enough, it seems to help. As you relax a particular part of the body and you're thinking to yourself, let it go. Let's practice that for just a bit here. Relaxing the whole body on out-breaths. Breathing in, breathing out. Breathing in, breathing out. When you feel very relaxed all over, return your awareness to the nostrils and begin an in-breath. But this time, let your attention travel up through the nasal passages, but then, as it were, keep going right into the interior of the skull, to the brain cavity. The brain, all important, of course. The brain is the organ of consciousness. The brain is what generates consciousness, usually as thinking. But during meditation, we want to turn off the thinking process. And in doing that, the first step is to relax the brain, which I suppose sounds a little odd because the brain is not a muscle, as we know. So how can you relax it? Well, technically, I suppose that wouldn't be correct. But you can get the feeling of relaxing the brain. And I think that's probably because the brain is interfused with a very large vascular system. Veins, arteries, capillaries. And you can get a feeling for this, the pulse of the blood as it flows. And that gives you this sense of very strong awareness of the brain itself. And then the feeling is to just, like the rest of the body, let the tension go. Relax that. Relax it away on out breaths. and have your full attention on what the brain is doing, which is to say, your consciousness as it is this moment. You want to be totally aware of the flow of consciousness, but detached, not going along with any of the things that might appear. And things, of course, keep appearing. Thoughts, images. The brain, the mind, if you will, tends to be restless. In India, it's known as the monkey mind, or even the drunken monkey mind. The brain or the mind is unpredictable. Thoughts bubble up. You never know what it's going to really be from one to the next, but they keep bubbling up. But if you notice as you look closely, there's at least a tiny space, a gap, between thoughts. Sort of like an analogy to breathing. One arises and declines, and then it's replaced by another. And you want to keep your mindfulness intent on that flow. And as I say, don't hitch a ride with any one of those thoughts. If you do, bring yourself back as soon as you can. Gradually, this restlessness, this link sausage of thoughts, will settle down. Obviously, that doesn't happen quickly. That's why meditation practice takes some time to master. But it's well worth it. Gradually, the mind settles down. What you want is consciousness free of thought, pure consciousness. Even a little bit for a moment is wonderful. Ultimately, no matter how long it may take, the goal is what we call the unitive state, where the thinking mind has become completely still, and consciousness, though, is very vivid, and one has this deep feeling of unity with all that is, with the fact of existence in its many forms. It's indescribable, but it's really the ultimate goal of meditation. How long should a meditation session be? That's up to you. When you start out, maybe 10 minutes, 15, 20. I think that a lot of people say that normally, unless you happen to be in a monastery where you have all sorts of wonderful opportunities, 30 minutes is about right, but more certainly if it feels right. How do you know when it ends, if you've decided on a certain length of time? Well, actually, you just sort of get used to that after a while. But there are things you can do, of course, like an alarm clock, put it under a pillow. The sounds of nature are wonderful. And you might make or use a tape that has a gentle rain or bubbling brook, such as we have in the background of this one. Some people like it, some people don't. I think if you do use something like that, it's best only for the initial part, the relaxing part, and then let it trail off as you begin the real practice of vipassana, mindfulness meditation, which is watching consciousness and letting it slowly become pure consciousness.